I think that there's a lot of questions on creativity, confidence, how to, I mean, from your experience specifically in pop-ups, I guess like productivity in pop-ups, maybe how you go about just like organizing your day to make sure that everything gets set up on time
Sure.
and you know all of those little nitty-gritty details that like I don't think other shows talk about. Like
Yeah.
I have my notes here. We didn't ask you anything literally about ingredients until probably like 50 minutes into the
Sure.
conversation. So like I call myself a food podcast, but it's really so much about the other things that I think can help downstream of creativity of food, because
Yeah.
if you know that you can get set up on time, you can go for that more ambitious presentation. Whereas
Yeah.
people who start with, okay, we're going to do this really cool, like the green apple balloon's a perfect example.
Sure,
Like
sure.
there are horror stories of executing that for 80 people a night at Alinea
Yeah.
because like it was ideas first, ideas first, ideas
Yeah,
first.
yeah.
And so that's what the listener nerds out on. So I guess anything
Yeah.
there?
Cool. Well, that's kind of a good thing to talk about, I think, because it, like you say, it's kind of in the industry. It's not the sort of thing you'd necessarily get to just like chat about, but like things like organization wise, particularly working on my own, like I have to organize the death out of things. Like, you know, they have to be. So I use an app called Things on my phone.
Yeah.
That
Yes.
links. Are you familiar with it? Yeah. So,
Yeah.
that links across everything. I have an iPad that is stuck on the fridge in the kitchen. Yeah, so that is synced with my phone, synced with my computer. All of my prep lists, and not just prep lists, but to-dos for... There are some things that are daily. There are some things that are set for the days that I'm open. They're all automated to repeat. All my orders are put into
Smart.
those. It's just like...
Smart.
My aim is for there to be more stuff in that than I need. For it to be like I'm trying to idiot proof it against my own idiocy, you know. I'm trying to make sure there's like I can't miss something. So stuff that I know to do every single day is still on the list, and you tick it off. Yeah, so I have different lists, like mise en place lists, like timings in there. Like I guess that built up over time. I used to have physically written out prep lists, then I had like a notes app that had them in, and then at some point I basically spent like a day transferring that stuff across and setting up all these repeating things. But that has been invaluable in terms of the investing that time to get that stuff set up. And of course that's a bit different for me because I have regular services and a regular menu that's sort of slowly changing. But it's another thing, like we were talking about, some basic camera skills, like some finding a program or an app or a system that works for you in terms of organization. I mean, maybe that's paper for people, but I would suggest that if you can digitize stuff like in some reliable way, that's extremely useful. And that perhaps leads into what you were mentioning about creativity as well, of like, if you want to leave yourself room to be creative, you need to get everything else out of the way that you can. So if you can nail down, you don't want to be thinking about, did I order this, or does this need ordering for tomorrow, and like, is this the day that I should prep this thing, or like you want to free up your time to be creative. I expect the other thing that I did that's with all my recipes is, so I have all of them synced to the cloud so I can get them on my phone, on my iPad, but the things that I'm making all of the time, I created like a PDF for myself, like, so it's essentially a little non-published cookbook, like of a working cookbook.
Smart.
But because it's a PDF, like, you can open it, like I don't have to open even a document. It's there in, because I'm using Apple for everything, it's there in iBooks. I open that up, that's the first thing that comes up. I can scan through it like super quickly. So those things are like, you know, these are the things that would be like, guests don't care about any of that stuff, but in terms of actually how helpful it is, it's more helpful than, like, you know, it's more helpful than me talking to them about like the ultrasonic bath for infusion or something. Like, if I have to pick between the two, I need the notes app more than I need the ultrasonic bath, you know. Like, that's the thing that's
100%.
you know.
Well, I mean, that's the with all this talk on AI, that's the conversation that's happening where it's like, oh, AI is going to take our whatever, and it's like, well, it's not that AI is going to take it, it's that a human using technology is going to come in and potentially be able to do it better than you.
Sure.
And as people might hear you talking about, you're doing 12-course tasting menus for 8 people a night, and you're doing all the prep yourself. It's like, of course there are these underlying support structures that you
Yeah,
lean on
you've
to
got
make
to.
sure that
Yeah.
you can execute. Yeah.
Yeah, you have to, like, it's the same way, like some of the things that I use in the kitchen I'm using almost purely because they enable my hands to be elsewhere and doing something else. So the Thermomix, the reason I like that as a blender is because it is big and heavy. Like I do sometimes use its temperature controls. There are certain things I'm using that for, but mostly it's that it's not like a Vita mix. I don't have to stand there and hold it while it goes. I can set that blending and walk away. Or the water bath, when I use it during service, I'm really using it for hot holding at a set temperature. And there's a lot of things like that where I'm using this technology that really has better capabilities, fancier things. But if those sorts of things mean I can walk away and do something else and know that thing is left, and that's the same for like prep lists, like anything that I can like sort of outsource to a I can't outsource to another person, so I outsource to a thing or to an app. And again, that's for anyone doing things like pop-ups and stuff like that. Like if you can spend that time to get systems in place, you will really reap the benefits of that later. I bet when you're doing your pop-ups, you're not like a couple of days before just getting a notebook out and starting like scribbling out orders and stuff.
No, I'm such a Notion fiend, and I use Notion. I'm familiar with things. I've used it before, but I do drawings on an iPad to make sure that the people I'm working with, because I don't do everything by myself. I hire people, but yeah, it's like, why not modernize? The way that I go about it is, what are the frequently experienced headaches that I have?
Yeah.
And so one example might be, I pass a couple of trays up because I've just finished cooking something, and the person that I've hired says, "How are we going to plate this?" And I'm like, facepalm emoji. I'm like, oh, I didn't even tell them how I'm going to do this. So I was like, how can I overcome that? I can use technology to sketch it out, send them an email of the sketch before the pop-up, and then when they get that pork passed to them, it's like, oh, I know exactly how Justin wants this done.
Yeah.
And so that, for a pop-up environment, is so much more beneficial, because in a restaurant, they can just stand there on their stage and watch you plate that. Yeah. But it's like, in a pop-up, this is the first time this dish has ever been plated by me. So it's like, how are we going to overcome that?
Yeah. Yeah, you're totally right. And I think like being familiar with some tools that are going to like help you with that stuff. Also, that all feeds through into the future. Even if someone's doing pop-ups because they want to then open a restaurant and stuff, like you are not going to regret learning a good additional organizational skills, or even boring stuff like using like how you're doing the financial side of things and like keeping notes on this stuff. But that stuff is boring. It's not the creative, fun stuff you want to be doing. But then if it takes you twice as long to do when you have to do it because you don't have a good system, then that's taking away from the time that you could be being creative, or you could be out, like picking wild ingredients or things like this, and there's so much of the technology like in our pockets on phones that's immediately helpful for this. That when the guys from Noma were going out and foraging, and they would drop pins where like different things were and stuff.
Interesting.
And and again, why say to someone, oh, it was sort of near this thing? It's like, no, it's pinned on a map.